Hello, all. I'm Himanshu, and I'm delighted to welcome you to all our webinar, Transforming Tradition into Sustainability with Regenerative Agriculture. So, today's session is focused on exploring innovative solutions for sustainable agricultural practices that can benefit both, that is, farmers and the environment. We are honored to have some of the leading experts in the field of regenerative agriculture who will share their insights and experiences with us. As we all know, that traditional farming methods often rely on chemical fertilizers and pesticides. These methods can harm the soil or can reduce crop yield and negatively impact the environment. Regenerative agriculture, on the other hand, focuses on building healthy soil, improving biodiversity, and reducing carbon footprint by utilizing natural sources such as cover crops, agroforestry, and crop rotation. Through this webinar, we aim to understand how regenerative agriculture can transform traditional farming practices into a more sustainable and eco friendly approach. We hope to explore the benefits of regenerative agriculture and how it can help farmers improve their livelihoods while also taking care of the environment. We have a fantastic lineup of speakers for the event today who will share their experiences and insights, and we encourage you all to actively participate in the discussion as well. We believe together that we can create a more sustainable future for agriculture. So, without further ado, let's get started and learn about transforming tradition into sustainability with regenerative agriculture. Joining from in-house research team is my colleague Shaurya Singh. She is one of the key members of the TechSci family with rich experience in management consulting. Currently, she's looking after the life science and agricultural domain and is an integral part of the agricultural domain in TechSci research. Over to you, Shaurya.
Thank you, Himanshu. So, before talking, I would be basically talking more about the market potential of regenerative agriculture. But before going forward, I would just like to give a brief introduction about what regenerative agriculture is. Regenerative agriculture is not just a farming practice, it is a combination of farming and land management that aims to improve and restore the health of ecosystems while also increasing the agricultural productivity. It goes beyond sustainable practices by actively working to regenerate the soil, water, and biodiversity of land. The regenerative agriculture basically relies on five basic principles, that is soil health, that is improvisation of soil health, biodiversity, water management, integrated livestock management, and carbon sequestration. So now I would like to give a overview on the market size of this regenerative agriculture market. So what we do at TechSci Research, being a market research company and a consulting company, what we do is like we explore different markets. We find out the market sizing, we find out the potential of different markets, how the market is going to perform, and what all scenarios are there in the market. What are the factors which are driving the market growth? What are the factors that can be a restraint for the market growth? And basis that we make our own estimations. So while making our estimations, we follow both the approaches, that is primary approaches and secondary research approaches, wherein we interact with a lot of professionals in primary research interviews. We take their insights. In secondary research, we do our own analysis and studies, and then we come up to a particular estimation of market considering different kind of factors. So, according to TechSci Research, we estimated global regenerative agriculture market size for the year 2022 as 8.5 billion, and we expect that the market is expected to grow at a robust rate of 14% because the whole world, if I talk about the world, everybody is getting aware, everybody is now focusing on sustainability, and they are more focused on achieving practices or doing or adopting practices with which they can achieve the sustainability goals. So, keeping this factor and major other factors in our mind, we have estimated this market size. So, when it comes to, can we move to the next slide, please? Yeah. So, regenerative agriculture has a lot of benefits. Basically, it is a holistic approach to farming that recognizes the interactions between the health of land, ecosystems, and food productions. It aligns with sustainable development goals by promoting environmental stewardship, social equity, and economic viability in agricultural systems. There are numerous benefits of regenerative agriculture, such as improving soil health, increasing biodiversity, enhancing resilience to climate change, reducing the carbon footprint, reduce reliance on synthetic inputs and fertilizers and pesticides, and at the end, increasing the overall farm yield. So basically, the concept is focusing on the farm yield as well and reducing the environmental impacts so that sustainability could be achieved. However, there are few challenges also associated with this practice, like lack of awareness, lack of training. Most of the farmers are not aware about this technique, especially in the emerging countries and the developing countries, and they even don't know that what approaches they should adopt in order to achieve the sustainability goals. Another thing that is like right now the market of regenerative agriculture is confined to the developed world only, like I mentioned, and it is like few big players who have only entered into this industry. Like Nestle is there, Danone is there. So a lot of companies needs to participate in this initiative in order to make the market also grow and in order to make this farming practice help in achieving sustainability. There are a lot of classic examples if I talk about that people have adopted this technology and are using it. So there are a lot of success stories associated with regenerative agriculture. Most of the people, they are adopting this technology and performing it, but they don't know it. However, there are certain classic examples from the USA, from there, Kenya, there is an example known as Laikipia Permaculture Center. In USA, there is Singing Frog Farms. Then Savory Institute is another classic example. So what I believe is like people are adopting the technology. There are a lot of classic examples, and I believe that in the future, regenerative agriculture technology or regenerative agriculture practice can help in achieving sustainability goals. So thank you so much. That's all from my side. Now I would pass it on to John to tell us more about regenerative agriculture.
Thank you. Um, yeah, my name is John Rulak. I'm coming in from Washington State in the West Coast of the United States. Appreciate the opportunity to present here today and welcome everyone who's attending. Um, I'm going to talk about 5 ways to accelerate regenerative agriculture, talk a little, first a little about a definition, but looking at honoring biodiversity, empowering women, uh, restoring grasslands, and uh, focusing on the small water cycle and agroforestry. Um, there are various ways that we can help accelerate regenerative agriculture and to regenerate natural systems. This is starting out with this first slide uh, is a definition of regenerative agriculture that I worked on with various people 4 or 5 years ago. That was led by Chico State, one of the colleges in California that's been a leader in regenerative agriculture as well as the carbon underground. Um, Regenerative agriculture definition describes farming and grazing practices that, among other benefits, helps reverse climate change by rebuilding soil organic matter and restoring degraded soil biodiversity, resulting in both carbon drawdown and improving the water cycle. Next slide. A simple way to think about regenerative agriculture is it runs on today's sunlight off of living plants and animal systems. Um, and, Whereas non-regenerative systems run on yesterday's sunlight. Next slide. And an example of regenerative agriculture that is a major focus is biodiversity. We're losing so many species uh, in the world. And a lot of times people don't understand this because it's happening at a rapid rate. Just give you an example. They call it in the United States, where I live, we call it the windshield test. When it was a common thing if you lived in the United States in the 1960s or 70s, and if you drove in an agricultural area, um, uh, your car would have lots and lots of bugs that would hit the windshield. Unfortunately, they died there because you were going through it at a rapid speed. And today, you don't see that so much. There's been some research that's been published in Europe where citizen scientists have been collecting samples of various insects in uh, uh, pastures, in forests, in farm fields, and they've seen the population of winged insects fall by over 75% since the 1970s. And it's estimated we're losing perhaps 1% a year. And they say that's a result of two major causes. One is the use of synthetic pesticides, and the second is the reduction of natural lands and clearing lands, whether it's road building or putting up development. So biodiversity is really important, and also we've lost over 50% of biodiversity. And if you look in the oceans, they're reducing the content of so much of the species. I like to say we live in an ocean planet, not a land planet. Over 70% of the surface of the ocean of the planet is ocean, and all the different plankton we've lost over 50% in the last 100 years due to warming oceans, and also the plankton's dying out because of increasing acidification. And a lot of the carbon that used to be in the soil is now back in, has been released through whether it's burning oil or coal, or agricultural or forest land management practices, burning forests, et cetera, has end up in the ocean. We can bring that carbon from the oceans and back into the soils. And that's one of the benefits of Regen Ag. Next slide. And just as we looked at the previous slides, that regenerative agriculture runs on today's sunlight, the agricultural practices of industrial agriculture or degenerative agriculture run on yesterday's sunlight, petrochemicals. And it may be a shortcut. It may appear to be to have these cheap inputs, but we've seen over the last few years that synthetic fertilizers are much more costly than they were. Now the prices have come down a bit, but it definitely is important to look at are we running on today's sunlight or yesterday's sunlight? It's obvious which is more sustainable, which is more beneficial over time. Next slide. So let's get to second way to accelerate regenerative agriculture, and that's to empower women leadership. This is a photo I took in New York City. I'm a co-producer of a new film called Common Ground. It's a follow-up film to Kiss the Ground, which is available on Netflix. And Common Ground tells the story about the potential of regenerative agriculture in the United States. And it features a lot of different women, and these are 5 women, including Rebecca Harrell on the left, which is the director of the film. So women see the world often different through the lens of through how they look at like the importance of since they're naturally more nurturing, and I think it's important to look at how we leadership and not just have men control agriculture, and I think that's important, and have a diverse thought and views of how we deal with land and how we grow our food. In such sense, it's such an important factor and really important, really impacts our health. Next slide. Next, I'd like to talk about restoring grasslands. Though not always understood, the majority of land for producing food is grasslands and not farmlands, and much of these grasslands have developed over eons through grazing animals. More and more of those grasslands have been degraded. This is Alejandro Carrillo, a rancher in the Chihuahuan Desert, the largest desert in North America that covers north part of Mexico, including Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. And there's several million acres of ranchers that has been slowly degraded, and we're going to show a little about that. Next slide. These deserts have degraded over the last 150 years. Partly that's been removal of the traditional native animals, whether it's deer, elk, buffalo, and so while some lands have been degraded because of overgrazing, where they have cows or sheep, etc., in one area continuously with no rest. The desert has become more biologically weak, and this is an example of that. But what they've worked on is the practice, what they're using in the Chihuahuan Desert and places all over the world, is where they bunch the animals, and in this area they're using cattle and some sheep together for a day or a few days, 4 or 5 days, and then not give it a rest and don't come back for 12 to 14 months. And their ranch is featured in the new film Common Ground, which should be out this fall for global release. Next slide. Alejandro likes to joke that he's stealing stealing the rain. At least that's what ranchers in the far distance from him. So the ranchers that are 100 miles away we're noticing that in the area where this 1 million acre plus, now I think it's almost 2 million acres, where they're doing this new way of ranching, that they're getting more consistent rains. So they weren't getting rains as their lands dry up. So they accused him of stealing the rain. So he jokes he's the rainmaker of the desert. And they since he took over his ranch at his family ranch over a decade ago, 25,000 acres, they've increased the amount. Before they had 250 cows, and they had to supplement it with hay and alfalfa throughout the year, and now they have over 600 cows, including sheep and donkeys, and they don't need to supplement it at all. So they've really increased that. And the small water cycle is something that I learned 4 or 5 years ago, and that often we think the water comes from rainfall will come from ocean systems, but a significant portion of rain occurs when you're far away from the ocean, from the local region, and by increasing the organic plant root growth, you start to set up the situation where you can get more even rains. Whereas if you are leaving the soil bare and doing all the things that are not conducive to soil health and biodiversity, you can start to create more drier areas. And this is not well understood. So it's something to look at, is the small water cycle. Next slide. And the last point discuss is agroforestry as a very effective tool. Agroforestry has been practiced by indigenous cultures for thousands of years. For example, some of you might be aware of the Mayan forest garden, where they take native forests, clear small patches, and grow a variety of crops that are local to the area, as well as some that they've imported. 2 years ago, I co-founded an organization called Agroforestry Regeneration Communities, and we're a network of community-based food forests in the global south. Our work primarily is in Guatemala, as well as in East Africa. And here's just an example of the power of agroforestry. In 2019, using slash and burn, they're producing maize. They decide to switch it out and use agroforestry. Here you see, multi-species. They're growing. One of the most common trees that they use in this system is Glitteria, a nitrogen-fixing tree. And then they're growing bananas. We also grow. We give farmer the choice whether they want like lemon or mango, avocado, citrus, other types of trees, and also doing annual crops as like an alley crop system: pineapple, sugarcane, cassava. And this is adding more diverse nutrition, more crops, and different income opportunities for the farmers here in Guatemala. We've been able to get support from One Tree Planted, and have trained over 25,000 farmers. Next slide. This just gives a little overview of agroforestry and some of the projects. So we've been accelerating food forests, as I mentioned, in Guatemala and in East Africa, and it's just where we have community programs. That's where we started. It promotes soil health, regenerative agriculture, permaculture, and another way of describing food forests is called syntropic agroforestry, or syntrophic agriculture, which has multi-species, multi-layered systems, and something that more people can learn more about. And we've also found that by empowering women and tapping into indigenous knowledge and creating food resilience is very, very important. Next slide. And this is in Malawi. In the upper left-hand corner is Mr. Biswick and his wife Grace next to him, and they've created a 15-acre permaculture center in Malawi, which is in East Africa, next to Zambia, and 2 years ago, they had trained 200 farmers that go through a 5-day permaculture workshop, and in the last 2 years, they've now trained 10,200 farmers. And these are some of the trees we've put in various tree nurseries, and those are some of the permaculture graduates there in the upper right-hand corner, and threw in some photos of some motorcycles. They also have in terms of like extension agents and people on their team in Guatemala. We have there's over 15 people who work to train farmers in Guatemala. Here in Malawi, we have over over 7 extension agents, and they were having to walk from farm to farm. So we're able to support them and to get some motorcycles so they could go to more farms. One thing I just wanted to share is we have a small animal program through rabbits, and we've been able to give to a breeding pair of rabbits that they build cage for, and they were able to reproduce quickly in just providing local grasses. They don't need to provide grain to the animals. And then each year, our latest program is that the farmer agrees to give one pair back to the program, which goes to more farmers. So right now we've given over 1,500 pairs of rabbits. So in 3 or 4 years, there will be over 15,000 families that will be producing rabbits. I think that might be my last slide, unless there's one more. But thank you for your time. Regenerative agriculture offers lots of, I think there's maybe one more slide. Yeah, if you want to go to that. Oh yeah. The other project, that another way to look at in terms of accelerating regenerative agriculture is for people to do it to regenerate their own patch of soil. So whether you have a lawn or some flowers or some vegetables or 10 houseplants, you can restore and regenerate and become part of the solution. It doesn't have to necessarily just be a large farm. And this is a project that I'm partnering with Kiss the Ground, which is a nonprofit organization promoting regenerative agriculture. And we believe healthy soil plus plants equals healthy people and nature. Next slide. There's maybe one more. So it's time for regeneration and to restore nature and create more resilience and also better income for farmers. Thank you for your time, and look forward to hearing more of the speakers.
Sure. Thank you, John, for your views and the presentation. Now I would like to move to the next speaker for the event, that is Robert Tucker. Currently, he's the Managing Director of Agricultural Guided Implementation Systems, which is a leading precision farming tool and equipment company. Under that, ORTRAC provides for the automatic steering of farming implements for greater efficiency and productivity in regenerative and organic cropping. Welcome to you, Tucker.
Thank you very much to everybody for listening in and giving me the opportunity to share this information. It's been many years of hands-on in the field and many hours spent in laboratories and workshops to get this technology up. So I'd just like to go to the next slide, please. Okay, so what I'm going to be discussing, sharing with you, is how precision guidance technology helps in effective farming and maintaining soil quality, and soil health. This presentation will focus on one application of precision guidance technology and the level of impact that will have when applied to horticultural cropping. Next slide, please. So what we mean, or I've taken to mean by effective farming, is the level of productivity and efficiency in cropping. Soil quality is the ability of the soil to support plant growth, and included in that is nutrients, soil structure, moisture, and organic matter. And finally, soil health is, I've taken to be the biological activity in the soil. And next slide, please. So for those who are familiar with the use of precision guidance in agriculture, you may be thinking of tractors being automatically steered using GPS systems, mainly used in cereal crops, large farms. The benefits of that is controlled traffic farming, where you've got limited soil compaction in the field because you're basically going over the same wheel track every year. And there's an increase in efficiency not only in the spraying but in harvesting. What I'm going to be talking about is precision guidance of farming implements. So in this picture here, you can see a weeding hoe behind the tractor, and between that hoe and the tractor is an automated steering system. I'd just like to share a little story. Denmark in Europe, back in the late 1990s, was looking to have the entire nation go to be organic, into making all their production of food to be organic. So the reason for that was the contamination of the groundwater. They found atrazine and glyphosate in their water supply or their groundwater at 5 times the allowable health limits. And this prompted them to look at if they could go to total organic production to address this issue. And out of that came what is known as the Beigel report. And this looked at what the possibility of actually doing that was. There was one key technology that had to be achieved if they wanted to become totally organic in terms of their food production, and that was precision guidance of farming implements. So next slide, please. So if we have a look at the benefits of manual weeding, so this is, as you can see here, the labour cost would be quite high, so this is not one of those benefits. So if we were to go to regenerative organic farming, we're looking at sustainability at a farmer level or a farm level. So the immediate benefits of not using herbicides is we get no contamination of the soil, water, or produce. We eliminate any issues with spray drift. We address any issues of herbicide resistance in weeds. It's safer for the farm workers, and there's actually a reduced cost of production in terms of not having to buy the herbicides. The downside here is that you've got an increase in costs, labour costs to replace that herbicide. Next photo, please. So this is another form of mechanical weeding. It's still hoeing, obviously a little bit faster or a bit more efficient than the previous slide. So in terms of a transitioning perspective, that is a farmer who's currently using herbicides or conventional or industrial farming practices, I like to look at what it would take for them to transition into regenerative organic. And I call this the positive spiral of improvement. So by not using herbicides, we're not destroying the soil biology. That means we can enable the re-establishment of soil biology, which equals improving soil health. So there's the first, I suppose, objective of this talk is maintaining, or in this case, improving soil health. If you improve soil health, you'll improve soil quality because you're improving soil structure, moisture retention, and sequestering carbon. So those two are linked. Improving soil health and quality improves plant health and vitality. So this is the improving spiral, if you like, as we go further along. And by doing that, we reduce the use of other pesticides because the plant is healthier and able to have, I suppose, a higher defense system against insects and funguses. One example here in Western Australia in the wheat belt, one farmer went to a regenerative farming system. He used no herbicides, and after 5 years found that he no longer needed insecticides or fungicides. Next slide, please. Okay, if we could just watch this film. It's a video of the mechanical weeder being used, or a mechanical weeder.
Okay, let me
just, yeah. Back one, please, if you've gone too far forward. Thank you. We just need to go back to the previous video. Yes, that one should. should run.
I think there is a problem with this video. It is not playing.
Okay, all right. So in this video, it's the previous picture you saw where there was two operators, one driving the tractor and one driving the implement. With this type of system, there's it's achieving all the desired results we want in terms of regenerative organic cropping. However, it lacks in efficiency in that it's very slow. You need two operators. Having tried it myself, the operator steering the weeder gets fatigued very quickly, especially your eyes. And as that happens, the accuracy diminishes and it becomes quite ineffective in terms of operators and their ability to continue. One very important aspect of it being very slow is that in countries where, or areas where there's a heavy rainfall, there might be a very narrow window of opportunity to actually weed the crop. If you miss that opportunity because the rains are continuous, the weeds can actually get away from you and cause losses in yields. So in terms of productivity, so I've addressed efficiency, now we're looking at productivity. Because of the slowness of mechanical weeding or even hoeing, the area of the crop that is planted is often restricted by the farmer's capacity to control weeds. As an example, here in Western Australia, I was going to plant some garlic. I approached a local grower for some seed and was discussing garlic with him. And he said this was his last year for growing garlic purely because of the weeding issue. A colleague of mine also grew garlic. He put 30,000 plants in the first year. Following year, he went to 12,000 and this year 2,500 purely because of the weeding issue. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so in this picture here, we're now going to look at precision guidance of implements. This photo is taken in Sweden. The crop is sugar beet. The weeding implement is guided by camera vision, and there's a small camera, that gentleman standing in the picture. In his left hand, he's actually got his hand resting on the camera. So Denmark was one of the first countries to look at precision guidance of implements, which I mentioned earlier. And I spoke to many farmers on this and asked them what was the performance criteria they required for an effective weeding system. And the consensus was a minimum speed of 6 kilometers per hour, plus or minus 1 centimeter accuracy, and 100% repeatability and reliability in all conditions. So all conditions is day or night, rain, hail or shine, and any weed density. So the camera vision, you see it in that photo, it's actually got quite a good speed. It is expensive. It is technician installed and maintained, so not by the farmer. And it is affected by weather and high weed densities. So maybe if we could summarize this, there's 3 key requirements for precision guidance of weeders. It's efficiency, effectiveness, their ability to actually get rid of all the weeds between the rows, and reliability, which I've just mentioned about all conditions and working all the time. So next slide, please.
There is a video.
Yeah, it should be a picture. Okay, so this is an example of a high-speed mechanical weeding system. Okay, so in that demonstration, that particular prototype, I spoke to the farmer after we'd finished doing those trials and field tests, and he advised me that by using mechanical weeding, he'd reduced his seedling to harvest time for broccoli from 13 weeks to 11 and a half. So there's some additional benefits in mechanical weeding beyond the efficiency and productivity aspects of it. Just in summary, precision guidance enables high-speed mechanical weeding, and you could see in that example the benefits of that, and these are the efficiency and productivity in horticultural cropping. And these are the two key aspects for replacing herbicides and weed control. Regenerative organic cropping, whichever way you do it, whether it's by hoe or whether it's by, we saw the two-person operated weeder or high-speed mechanical weeding, all those benefits of regenerative organic cropping are there regardless. The bit that's missing, and this is where the precision guidance comes in, it provides the efficiency and productivity required to provide the food and to make a farm viable or more viable. The last point in the summary enables soil health and structure to improve through improving soil biology. So that's really, again, just talking about the regenerative organic aspect of it. There's some of the flow-on effects that come from this is viability and sustainability of small farms. Many small farms aren't able to produce the volume of food required to make them viable, and that's certainly happening here as well. By small farms being viable, in other words, they're not limited to the amount of crop they can put in because of the weeding issue. This makes small farms able to be operating where maybe at the moment they're failing, or numbers of small farms are being bought up by bigger farmers to stay viable. Of course, this viability then flows onto rural communities. There are other applications of precision guidance that provide additional benefits and efficiencies and increased productivity. So that's basically my presentation. There's quite a bit there. I touched on the top of many aspects of it, and I really only looked at that one application, which is probably the key application in terms of using precision guidance. I think that providing technologies and tools to farmers that enables them to be more productive, more profitable in the regenerative agricultural or cropping area will, I think, bring more farmers who are currently not in this space to actually transition. And that's what I think, as a movement, that's where we need to be looking, is to get all farmers on board in this regenerative organic space, because there's so much at stake if it doesn't happen. So thank you for your time and for this opportunity to share a little bit about precision guidance.
Okay. Thank you, Tucker, for providing insights related to the precision farming tools and the equipments. Moving on to our next speaker. Our next guest is joining from Ghana is Asare Baudis Samuel. His experienced group chief executive officer with a demonstrated history of working in the IT and services industry. Currently, he is employed as sustainability field project assistant with the Cargill Cocoa and Chocolate Incorporated. Welcome to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sharon. Project assistant at Cargo Cocoa and Chocolate from Ghana. Currently at the field at the BNE and also the Kwai district in the Western North region. this morning I'm glad to present to you crop production through regenerative agriculture practices. Next slide, please. So basically, my presentation will focus on about five main points. I will first of all introduce you to the world of regenerative agriculture, action, the future of crop production. So basically, regenerative agriculture is a holistic approach to farming that focuses on improving soil health, increasing biodiversity, and reducing carbon footprint. It goes beyond sustainability by aiming to restore and regenerate degraded ecosystem. So at Cargill, we believe in the power of regenerative agriculture to transform agriculture and help create a more sustainable future. Through the presentation, we aim to introduce you to the concept of regenerative agriculture and highlight its importance in today's world. Next slide, please. Regenerative benefits. One of the key benefits is to improve soil health by using practices such as cover cropping, crop rotation, and reduced tillage. Regenerative agriculture helps build healthy soil that are rich in organic matter and nutrients. This leads to better crop organic matter and nutrients. That leads to better crop organic yields, increase water retention in the soil. Another benefit of regenerative agriculture is to increase biodiversity by creating diverse habits for the plants, where we create enable environment for the plant to get enough nutrient to grow well by increasing enough nutrient in the soils. And so now let me take you through cocoa production at Cargill. Cargill is one of the world's largest producers of cocoa, and we are committed to sustainable cocoa production. We have implemented regenerative agriculture practices across our cocoa supply chain to improve soil health, increase biodiversity, and reduce carbon footprint. Through our efforts, we have seen positive results in cocoa production. Our farmers have reported higher yields to farmers. So all these approach that we're using, at the end of the day, it improves farmer livelihood and also increase higher yield for the farmer. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. That uh, though our effort at Cargill seem to bring about positive results in cocoa production, our farmers have reported higher yields. So through this agriculture, regenerative agriculture practices, at the end of the day, next slide, please. So regenerative agriculture in action. To showcase our regenerative agriculture practices in action, we have compiled images and videos that demonstrate the process. So when we go to the field, we show these videos and pictures to the farmers to follow them. And at the end of the day, when these practices are being followed well, it brings about yield increase increments. We are proud of our effort to implement regenerative agriculture practices agriculture by working for our plants and provide solutions to the entire world and the homes of our farmers in this neighboring environment. Next slide, please. So the future of crop production. With regenerative agriculture, we know that crop production has a better future, where it has a potential to revolutionize and crop production to transform the way we produce food by focusing on soil strategy. So at Cargill, we are committed to promoting regenerative agriculture and helping create a more sustainable future. We believe that by working together with the farmers, consumers, and other stakeholders, we can build a better world of generation to come. So what we are focused on is at the end of the day how farmers are going to get more yield through this regenerative agriculture. And once they get more yield, they can able to take care of their on the next slide, please. So basically, that is how we are using regenerative agriculture to help our farmers. So I thank you all for such a great opportunity to express myself about the world of regenerative agriculture. Thank you all. I'm grateful.
Thank you, Mr. Samuel. Moving on to our next speaker, who is joining us from Dallas, is Dr. Isaac Mupanga. He calls himself a farmer, researcher, educator, and consultant, helping farmers achieve their sustainability and regenerative agriculture goals through science based applied research and extension programming. Also, he is the author of the comprehensive overview on secular agriculture as a climate smart tool. Welcome to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
All right. Now go back to the first slide. Yeah, all right. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thanks for the earlier presenters as well for the insight that they brought in already. Yeah, so a disclaimer that I'll put on here is that all that I'm going to discuss with you is from my own research work and perspective. It's not a representation of any company that I work for. Yeah. So, in short, what would term as regenerative agriculture is basically what most of the speakers have discussed: improving soil health, enhancing biodiversity, improving farmers' livelihood, and then watershed health as well, and carbon sequestration, which is also, in most cases, people have different terminologies for it. Yeah, so in this picture here, this picture was taken from a farmer's field. As you can see, the leguminous plants, you see the root nodules there, which is a nitrogen fixing plant. You see how nicely it's formed. This is how the biological forms of fixing nitrogen happens with leguminous crops. Yeah, so you can also see the cover crop behind me, which is a winter cover crop that is being used to regenerate semi-desert soil. This picture was taken from Arizona when I work with a small-scale farmers there to develop a program which is called Commercial Horticulture and Small Acreage Extension and Research Program. Next slide. Yeah, so generally speaking, this has been touched on already. Agriculture is the main source of food for us. And in the process of trying to feed ourselves, we have also, in many ways, caused harm instead of doing good because of the practices that we use. And also, when you look at the trend on how many farms are getting out of operation, and also how many farms have been acquired by other farms, bigger farmers, you see that in the US, you see a very big trend of farms reduction and also the average farm size increasing. with time. But as to the land area, kind of remain fairly almost the same in agri. So it's basically you can see that small farms are being acquired by bigger farms and merged together. And in that case, you see that most of the small farms are getting out of business either because they cannot afford the cost of operation, or climate change is affecting them in terms of water availability, and also where they'll be able to produce. Soil health is also a big thing affecting them as well. Yeah, so one thing though that regenerative agriculture we have not talked about so far is the food waste. We are talking a lot about how much food we need to produce more to be able to feed the world. But what we are not talking about enough is the amount of food that we waste from the farm up to the kitchen. Yeah, so it forms a bigger portion. When we look at this data here, we can see that yeah, about many of the food that we produce go waste. Affect uh, emissions, because if you are not able to account for all to go to the final production, you are causing emission as well along the line. And also fresh water that we use to produce this food doesn't really come back to benefit us. So we see that there's a high percentage of water that is being utilized in agriculture across board. And also when we look at biodiversity loss, 80% of the biodiversity loss that we have is associated to agricultural activities that either by livestock production or crop production, anything that has to do with agriculture. So we can see that in terms of trying to feed ourselves, we have actually also caused a lot of environmental issues as well. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier on a little bit about the food waste, when we let's look at the first right-hand side of this slide. We can see that when people are talking about regenerative agriculture, it's not a standardized definition for regenerative agriculture. So people talk about regenerative agriculture from different perspectives. In this paper here, by Newton et al. 2020, that was published in Frontier Sustainable Food Systems, they categorize how people look at regenerative agriculture. Some look at it from a process based kind of definition. That means that the practices that are implemented, somebody implementing cover crop alone will say, okay, I am a regenerative agriculture farmer. Another person just having livestock on their farm will also say, okay, I'm a regenerative agriculture farmer. Another person just having reduced tillage alone will say, I am a regenerative agriculture farmer. And the other group of people is the outcome based. So in this kind of definition, the grower or the supplier, whoever that is claiming to be a regenerative agricultural farmer or supplier, look at the outcome. Are the practices which is the cover crop, reduce tillage, improve irrigation systems, and all this, reduce chemical use, organic amendment, and are these practices bringing any outcome? Is it improving the soil with time? Is it reducing carbon emissions on the farm with time? Is it is it able to sequester carbon with time? Is it able to improve soil shed health, which could be eutrophication, reducing all those? Is it able to improve biodiversity? Is it able to improve farmers' livelihood? Yeah, so once you can measure the outcomes that you get from implementing those practices, then you can also consider yourself to be a regen ag farmer. So those are the outcome-based definitions. Yeah, but in most cases, we have to look at it from both angles, either by practice or outcome. So that as we are looking at the practices, we also are able to track and see are the practices we are implementing actually bringing some positive benefit that we are looking at for. One thing that is missing in region ag, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, is food losses. Yeah. In my point of view, I think food losses should be part of region ag. No one is talking about that because maybe it's not a comfortable topic to to talk uh, in many occasions. When we look at food losses, we have about 15%, which is about 1.2 billion tons of food loss that occur at the farm level globally. So even before the food is moved from the farm to wherever it's supposed to be, to the grocery store or to the at the farm level, about 15% of that food is lost. In some cases, it's because the companies that are buying it says, okay, it doesn't meet specification because maybe it's too small, or the shape is not what they want, or something else, or heavy metals, or some pollution contaminants that is causing it, or total loss by flood or something else. Yeah, so in many cases, we have 15% losses at the farm level. But when we look at total loss from the farm level with harvest, which is also after harvesting through the supply chain at the grocery store, and then on our food in our kitchen as well, it goes up to 40%. So 40% of the food we produce go waste. We don't eat it, which is very serious. Yeah, so, and many parts of the world, people are growing hungry, not having food to eat, and 40% of food is being lost. So, to me, from my point of view, when we are talking about regenerative agriculture, we cannot talk about regeneration of our food system without talking about reducing waste within the system. Next slide. And some of the drivers that lead to these food losses is the direct drivers or indirect drivers. So like I mentioned earlier, is technology or infrastructure is not there, the road system is bad, farmers cannot take their food to the market to sell, and then the food go bad, or other technological issues or environmental problems as well. And it could also be agronomic, it could also be just there is no market at all, and it could also be human factor. Some of the human factor is that we are so going to knowing things to be straight and nicely shaped that most people, when they see a carrot that grows into a rock and has like an ugly shape, they will not eat that carrot. They'll say it's not good to eat. But that is that the carrot growing into a stone or growing into a root and having an ugly shape does not make the carrot any less of a quality. It's just a shape issue. So we have to, as individuals, be in tune to this kind of things that are happening and then educate ourselves and people around us so we can reduce the food losses. The next slide. So when we talk about regenerative agriculture, I'm talking about regenerative agriculture today in the context of circular agriculture. So, which was the topic that I'm discussing from the beginning. So, how can we regenerate our agricultural system by looking at circularity? How can we make sure that whatever we produce, there are no leakages for waste? And even how we produce it, there are no leakages for waste. So when we look at this diagram here, you can see that from the crop here, as part of the crop is used for grain, and then it goes to the factory for processing. There's a byproduct here, and then the byproduct comes all the way either to the farm to be utilized as a feed for the animal, or is composted and sent back to the farm as a fertilizer. And then at the animal level, livestock level, you see that the manure comes all the way and goes into the field again. So there are no leakages of nutrients along the supply chain, which makes it a circularity. So the waste streams will be eliminated and make our systems more resilient and less dependent on synthetic inputs as we have today. So the more we're able to recycle this organic material back into the farm and reutilize them as a material, the lesser will be depending on synthetic inputs as well. And this benefit of circularity also go back to improving soil health, biodiversity, improving, reducing carbon sequestration, improving farmers' livelihood. So once we're able to recycle these items here, you see that you'll be less dependent on buying inputs, and that will increase your profitability and livelihood as well. And practices, as John mentioned earlier, agroforestry, cover cropping, reduced tillage, the use of biostimulants, and composting, all these are practices that you can use in circular systems. Next slide. Yeah, so I wrote a book on that, circular agricultural system as a climate smart tool. And I will discuss in this book the role of small scale farmers, or the role of stakeholders. And also I developed a small model on how you can implement circular agricultural systems on your farm. When you talk about circular systems, people think that it has to be one fit all, which is not the case. You have to look at it from what you have as a resource. What do you have today? How can you start and improve upon this? When we look at this pyramid, we see that at the bottom here, you can do circular agricultural system at a global level, especially countries that share borders. That can happen, but it's at this level, it's not very sustainable. We can see that it's not an efficient system to use. And as you climb up the pyramid, you see that you go to the country level, you go to the regional level, you go to the community level, and you go to the farm level. That is where we all want to be. But we have to start from somewhere. If we are not at the farm level today, which is the most efficient, meaning that we have everything circling in a circle, that we only need a little input from outside our systems to make the farm profitable, then we can start at a community level. Maybe you have a livestock farm, that you have manure. Another person has rice farm that they have straw that you can trade. You can trade these items and then get the manure back into your farm, and then the straw will go to the cattle farmer to utilize it on their farm, and then you get the manure back on your farm. It's a level of this is at the community level. But if you have livestock at the same time, crops, then you can already do it by yourself. I wrote a publication when I work at the University of Arizona, looking at the vine growers, how they do their vineyards, and also utilizing the byproduct. After making the wine, they will normally throw the waste away, but I developed a program where they are now utilizing the waste material in the vineyard. So right now they have like a circulating of system, and also in Arizona the soil pH are very high, and the byproduct from the winery is very acidic. So it's actually a good material for them to use to reduce their pH as well. Yeah, so when you get this book, you get more details about how to implement this circular systems, and yeah, it's a good rate to have. Yeah, let's go to the next slide, and then also talk about what is the role. Everyone has a role to play in implementing these systems. The farmer has a role to play to participate in research and also share ideas with other people. You have a practice that work, you share with other people as well, farmer groups as well. The society, culture, and consumers has a role to play as well. If consumers don't support your idea of regenerative agriculture and circularity, there's no way you can make profit out of what you are doing. But if they support it, and you even have to charge a little bit more, they'll be willing to pay, right? If the government do not have good policies to support climate smart systems, regenerative systems, circularity systems, it's not going to work. There are no policies, there are no incentives to support. But a government that has that mindset and support will definitely have incentives and also have programs that will support farmers to be able to implement those systems. And research has a very strong role that if we don't have enough research available for us to be able to implement these systems, it's also very difficult that we don't have science-based information that will prove concepts and help us implement these practices as well. So there is a role that every one of us on this call need to play to be able to make this a reality. So let's look and see what we can do. As no matter how little it is, it's very big. So don't think about it very, very small, but think about it in the way that everyone is contributing a little bit to be able to come to the bigger picture. Maybe the last slide. Next slide. Yeah, so in conclusion, what I would say is that for us to make any progress in terms of regenerative agriculture, circular agriculture, whatever term you want to name it, if we are not able to circulate, if we are not able to close the loops, the gaps where there are leakages of waste, if we are not able to minimize and recycle everything, I mean the globe in a way like it's a globe, right? We have to think around the globe and know that whatever we are doing now, there is shouldn't be waste unless it cannot be used for anything. We should make a conscious effort to be able to think circularity, to have a circularity mindset. And if we're able to have this level of mindset, that is going to help all of us in many ways to be able to implement regenerative agriculture that will be an outcome based and give us a lot of benefits as farmers, reducing cost of production for us because we have a lot of material that we're already utilizing and improving livelihood as well, and many other benefits that we look at, either as the company point of view, individual point of view, or whoever you are. There is a role for anyone to play. You could be a consumer that has to support a farmer that is trying to implement this system, or you could be a researcher that has to provide some research information for people to make decisions. You could be a government official that has to implement policies to make it friendly for farmers to be able to implement these systems as well. Yeah, if you need more about my work, if you type in my name, Mpangazi, you see a lot of my publications that you can, most of them are open access publications that you can have access to read them. So go on ResearchGate, LinkedIn, it's also there. If you go on Google Scholar, you find them there as well. Feel free to go into my system and utilize those materials. I have a lot of material around small scale farmers as well that I know most of our participants are probably small scale farmers. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to any questions that may come in.
Thank you, Isaac, for providing insights related to the circular agriculture and raising the important questions related to the regenerative agriculture. Moving on, we did have received questions from the attendees. First one that I would like to stress upon is the importance of the regenerative agriculture. See, every company and every we are here to talk about a regenerative agriculture, but how about big tech giants or corporate giants can embrace or adopt it? What would you like to say on that, John?
Yeah, that's a that's a good question. I mean, corporations are starting to respond, to this issue, um, and it's sometimes a mixed bag. I'll speak to it in the United States. Um, One of the first companies, the largest food companies, packaged foods companies, called General Mills, and um, they source huge amounts of annual crops for their food systems, their products. They've made commitments to sponsor various research, um, including Jonathan Lundgren's the Adias project, which is working on assessing 1,000 farms across the United States on which ones are regenerative, which ones are not, and they're featured in our new film Common Ground. They also contracted with Understanding Ag, which is Gabe Brown, who's a farmer in North Dakota, to train some of their farmers. And they've set up a goal for 1 million to convert 1 million acres to regenerative practices. um, there's other companies though that make announcements like that they're going to be 100% regenerative by 2030. But how much regenerative are there going to be in 2025? And sometimes the marketing departments are not aligned with their supply chain departments, so there can be some disparity there. And I would say we need more green and less washing when it comes to this. But large corporations are hard to sometimes shift the state of their focus. But there is movement in that.
Robert, would you like to add something to that?
You are muted, I think.
Apologies. Maybe if I could look at it from a machinery point of view, dealerships and things. I've seen some progress in Europe with research and prototypes being trialed to bring efficiency and productivity into small to medium-sized farms. From my observation, the larger firms tend to be quite slow to change. They need to see that it's going to be a direction in which farming's going before they necessarily commit their resources to it. I think the drive that makes a change, from my experience, has been from the small farmers and the local engineering workshops who are trying to make changes to keep their farms sustainable, to keep their clients operational. So I think there's enough of movement and happening in that area. There's enough diversity of research happening at a farm level here in Australia, in Europe, from what I saw, that there will be a groundswell of change which will be observed by the big corporations, and some of them are moving in that area. There's some of the larger tractor manufacturers have moved into controlled traffic farming in Europe. So I think there's change there, but I think at this point it's early days. But certainly the groundswell there would indicate that I would think there'll be changes to in the large supplies of machinery to farmers.
Okay. Isaac, would you like to add something to it?
Yes, yeah, that's a good direction. Like from my experience, big companies are really getting on board because they see a lot of benefit in this regard, because supply is key to companies making progress in terms of business. And if food and beverage, especially food and beverage companies, they have realized that it's very important to uh, help their farmers to be resilient by implementing these practices. So most of them are picking up, either have programs already established or that they are working on. PepsiCo, I work for PepsiCo. I can speak to that. It's public information. I can speak to that. Uh, it's not to say that I'm representing PepsiCo. Anyway, so they have a PEP positive goal that they're working on and helping farmers to implement regenerative agricultural practices, either by supporting them in terms of research or supporting them in terms of many aspects of things they do. And many companies have also committed to reduce emissions, which means that they have to really support these farmers to reduce their scope 3 emissions. If they are not supporting the farmers to reduce emissions on their farms, it will go back to affect them in the long run. So, because of the sustainability agenda, um, it's becoming a very strong indication that most companies are supporting to make sure that there's a supply relationship built very well to get consistent supply of their raw materials, and also to make sure that yeah, they are working towards their sustainability goals as well. But still, a lot of work still need to be done. Uh, Not underscoring that there's still the need for a lot of work to be done in that area.
Samuel, what are your views on the same? Right. Okay. Um,
Okay, so basically, I think this we need to focus more on the future of regenerative agriculture, since it goes a long round to helping our environment and then sustainability of our crops in our various sector. So a lot of energy and research needs to be goes into it to help us improve the livelihood of our people in these local communities, so as we help protect our environment and the planet as well. Thank you.
okay. Another question that we have received from our attendees is we can acknowledge the fact that because of the use of the fertilizers or artificial chemicals, quality of soil is degrading. So why is there a need for regeneration in the first place? So any one of the speaker would like to comment on this?
Well, I can go on this. Yeah. So when we look at our agricultural systems in the past, the conventional systems, not the traditional systems, is the conventional systems. Traditional systems has been in the past that they were most sustainable systems, like conservative systems, until the green revolution came in, and then like the promotion of heavy tillage equipment then came into place, and also the use of heavy synthetic inputs as well. Yeah, so these uh, systems, conventional systems, are a trigger for soil erosion. They are trigger for soil compaction. The use of machines are a trigger for soil compaction, and also in many ways, practices that we do reduce biodiversity. So the reduction in biodiversity means that your soil is not healthy anymore. The reduction in organic matter means that your soil is not healthy anymore. The reduction of soil compaction means that your soil is not healthy anymore. So when it rains, it just washes it away, and the soil is very prone to erosion. But when you have a healthy soil, it's a spongy, um, it's a spongy material. It's not compacted. When it rains, it's able to absorb the soil much better. And the root systems has a lot of beneficial microorganisms, beneficial microbes that help to recycle the nutrient as well. So to be able to regenerate soil means that where we are today, using heavily dependent on synthetic chemicals, heavily dependent on heavy tillage, we need to use practices that will help to take the soil back to where it was in terms of ecosystem. Also, that is where we are trying to bring in the organic amendments or the cover crops, agroforestry, reduced tillage, systems that will help to restore that soil to, we cannot get to the original place that it was before. For example, when you go into the like a typical forest system, we cannot get to that level, but we're trying to get to where the soil will be resilient to be able to, when it rains, it's not washing away, but rather able to hold the soil, able to hold the water so that the water stays in the soil for longer period for a crop to depend on and all that. So that is what I can give to it. I'll leave it here. So if any of the team members has something to add, I'll do so. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's the soil loss is is an ongoing crisis, and it's not just 2023. This has been going on for thousands of years. Like one of my critiques of our kind of modern society is we put everything in this bucket called climate change. Like, oh, we get a bad storm and it washes soil away. Oh, it's based on climate change. And the average person thinks, oh, it's because we're burning oil or coal, which obviously impacts systems, but it's the land management, and that's been an issue for thousands of years, not just since the modern term invented called climate change. An example, the United States, it's been reported that our largest export is topsoil in terms of tonnage. So we're exporting our valuable topsoil through rivers and creeks and lakes out into the ocean. There's a term in permaculture called slow it, spread it, and sink it. And when we focus on regeneration, like keeping the ground soil covered and improving soil quality, we achieve some of those better soil quality results, and we're not going to wash away the soil, and we're going to have more dynamic farming systems.
Any other speaker would like to speak on the same? Okay. Another question that I have for you is that do you think that carbon farming is a part of regenerative agriculture? Robert?
That's a
Yes,
good
please. So,
question. Yes, I suppose carbon farming is not really my area of expertise, though I've heard of it. I think regenerative agriculture, or the way I've always thought of it, is that it's about restoring the soil back to its original capacity to provide the right environment, both biologically and structural wise, to grow nutritious plants, crops, whatever it is you're growing. My thoughts on carbon farming is really it's a tool that has come in to I suppose give farmers a revenue stream for going to regenerative farming practices. In terms of, I mean, whether there's carbon farming there as part of the farmers, I suppose, revenue stream, or as a means to stimulate regenerative farming practices. If it achieves those things, and I think there's a purpose in it. I don't think it's going to change anything in terms of our food quality, etc. On that side of things, in terms of what's coming off the farm in terms of food.
What does other speakers feel on the same? Would you like to add anything to it?
Yeah, I think that's right, Robert. It's just an incentive. If it is done right, hopefully it's done right. Yeah, so we hope that it will be done right for the farmers to get an additional incentives for that will incentivize implementation of best practices that will lead to more carbon being captured in the soil, that they can get a benefit out of it. Yeah, but the way things are going, I'm not sure if we're on the right path to make it, to do it right. But hopefully, we hope that regulations and like as new science is coming on, more research is done in this area, there'll be ways to be able to handle it in a way that will really benefit the farmers.
Okay. I think we are running in on the limit, so I'll quickly wrap this up. So, what does our speakers feel about the concluding remark for the webinar?
Yeah, so I can start off by saying that whatever we try to do, let's have that mentality of circularity in mind to close the loop of waste streams so we don't have a lot of waste going into the system. Having about 30 to 40% of food waste is just unacceptable. And we need to do a better job in that regard as well. And also find a way to include food loss reduction as part of regenerative agriculture, so that as we are moving along, we are not getting far into to realize that, okay, we should have done this earlier than we needed to be doing it. So that's what I would take. And thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for the panel for your insight as well.
Moving on to Thakur, what would you like to say on the same?
I think for me, I suppose the takeaway for this is that the farmer, supporting the farmer in making his farm viable, not only to support his family, his community, but also to support the environment, his ability to provide food into community. I think we need to support the farmers more in supplying the tools and the methods and the principles of regenerative agriculture so that he can actually do his job with minimal inputs and supply I suppose the ideal environment we all like to see happening on the farm and happening in our environments and in our communities. I think providing him with those right methods, those right tools, is going to be key to getting a change happening in the farm itself. And I mean, there's many aspects to this whole question, and they all need to come together. And I think it's having discussions like this that promotes further discussions, enables things to change. And I'm just thankful for the organisation and what it's set up today. And I just pray that out of this comes more understanding and a greater movement in this area.
Sure. Rolek, what would you like to say on the same? What are your opinions?
Yeah, well, this is it's great to hear different perspectives and presentations. So appreciate that. I think it's important to, one of the areas that I'm focused on is to help empower and encourage individuals instead of just relying on the farmer to solve the issue. But what can people do? You know, if they have 10 houseplants, are they using synthetic fertilizers, or instead of using, there's this. I like to say that if you look at like the United States organic shopper, and if you go into her home and you open up the refrigerator, you'll see organic strawberries or organic eggs, and you ask why, and she'll say, well, it's better for the health of my family, it's better for the environment. And you close the refrigerator door and you walk down to her garage, and you go into the garage, and you'll see bottles of glyphosate or Roundup and synthetic fertilizers. And so there's this disconnect between the quote ecologically conscious shopper in the United States and their practices in their own yard. And so that's I've been working on how do we solve that issue, and working with Kiss the Ground on this new project, Kiss the Ground .earth. So I think it's important to get more people involved in this, because it's such an important issue, and we're not going to solve this just by only relying just on farmers to solve this. It's going to take a multi-pronged approach. And the time is so important right now because natural systems are collapsing in front, every year. So things are getting more challenged, biodiversity loss, topsoil loss, more erratic weather. So the time is now, but there is a growing awareness of this. So thank you again for the opportunity to present and to learn more from other speakers today.
Samuel, what are your concluded remarks for the webinar? I think he cannot hear us, so let's move. Thank you to all the speakers. Each one of you is joining from a different geography, and it's different time in different countries. But thank you to you all for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. We and the attendees learned a lot about regenerative agriculture today and how it can transform our food systems and our planet for the better. Instances and real life experiences quoted by each one of you has further enriched the discussion. And this is how we conclude our webinar on transforming tradition into sustainability with regenerative agriculture. Have a great day and hope to see you again. Thank you, everyone.